On my 18th birthday, my parents mocked my grandfather for giving me a crumpled old check. They told me to throw the trash away, convinced he was broke. But out of respect, I took it to the bank. When the teller saw the amount, she didn't laugh, she fainted. That piece of paper was actually worth $142 million. Grandpa wasn't poor. He was testing us. The manager then revealed the catch. I inherited the fortune, but with one brutal condition. My greedy parents couldn't touch a single cent. Watch what happened when they realized they lost everything. The wrapping paper on the table was shiny, expensive, and screaming for attention. It was my 18th birthday, and my parents, Greg and Karen, had thrown a small dinner party. Not because they wanted to celebrate me, but because they wanted to show off to their friends. Open ours first. Mum squealed, shoving a small box into my hand. I opened it. It was a key to a BMW. Oh wow, I said, forcing a smile. Thank you. I knew the truth. The car was leased in Dad's name. It was effectively his car that I would be allowed to drive to run their errands. It was a gift with strings attached, just like everything else they gave me. Then there was Grandpa Joe. Grandpa sat in the corner, wearing his faded cardigan and patched trousers. My parents constantly made fun of him behind his back, calling him Old Man River, or the Hoarder, because he lived in a tiny, cluttered cabin and reused tea bags. They only invited him because they felt legally obligated. I have something for you too, Jason, Grandpa said, his voice raspy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled, yellowed piece of paper. It wasn't wrapped. It was just a check. My dad snorted into his wine glass. Oh, look, Karen. Dad's breaking the bank again. What is it this time? $5? Don't spend it all in one place, Jason. Mom giggled. It's cute. He thinks he's helping. I ignored them and took the paper. It was an old check from a bank that didn't even exist under that name anymore. First National Trust, which had been bought out decades ago. The handwriting was shaky. Pay to the order of Jason Miller amount. Everything I have. There was no number written in the box. Just the words, everything I have. My parents burst out laughing. Everything he has. Dad mocked, wiping tears from his eyes. What? His collection of old newspapers and that rusted toaster? Jason, you can probably cash that for about 40 cents at the recycling plant. It's the thought that counts, Mum said condescendingly, patting Grandpa on the head like a dog. Thanks, Dad. Jason will ... treasure it. Grandpa ignored them. He looked at me with intense, clear blue eyes. Take it to the bank downtown tomorrow, Jason, he whispered. The big one. Ask for Mr. Sterling. Only him. Okay, Grandpa, I said softly, tucking the check into my pocket. I promise. Don't bother, son, Dad said, pouring more wine. It's a fake check. It's senility. Just throw it in the trash later so you don't embarrass yourself. I'm not throwing it away, I said. My parents rolled their eyes and went back to talking about their country club memberships. They didn't see the look on Grandpa's face. It wasn't confusion. It was anticipation. The next morning, I drove my new BMW to the bank. I wasn't going because I expected money. I was going because I respected my grandfather, and if he wanted me to do this errand, I would do it. My parents insisted on coming along. We have to see this. Dad chuckled as he climbed into the passenger seat. I want to see the teller's face when you try to cash a check written on a napkin from 1980. It's going to be hilarious. We walked into the bank. The marble floors echoed with the sound of my parents snickering. I approached the counter. The teller, a young woman named Sarah, smiled politely. How can I help you? I'd like to cash this, I said, feeling my face heat up as I handed her the crumpled yellowed check. My dad leaned against the counter, smirking. Just let him down easy, sweetheart. His grandpa is a little cuckoo. Sarah took the check. She looked at the old logo. She looked at the shaky signature. She frowned. Then, she typed the routing number into her computer. Her eyes went wide. She blinked, rubbed her eyes, and leaned closer to the screen. Her hand started to tremble. Is there a problem? Mom asked, ready to laugh. Sarah didn't answer. She stood up, her face draining of all color. She looked at me, then back at the screen, and then her knees seemed to give way. She grabbed the counter to steady herself, gasping for air. I need the manager, she whispered, her voice shaking violently. I need security. Oh my God. What is it? Dad asked, annoyed now. Is the account closed? Just tell us so we can leave. Sarah looked at my father with terrified eyes. The account isn't closed, sir, she stammered. It's the amount. I've never seen that many zeros in my life. Zeros? Dad laughed, though the sound was nervous now. You mean zero balance, right? Look, miss, just give us the paper back. My father is mentally declining. He probably wrote down his phone number. Sarah didn't listen. She pressed a silent alarm button under the desk, not for police, but for the highest level of management. Moments later, a heavy door swung open. A man in an immaculate grey suit walked out. He looked like he owned the building. This was Mr. Sterling. The bank manager Grandpa had told me to ask for. Is there a problem? Sterling asked, his voice booming. Sarah handed him the check with trembling fingers. Sir, the account number. It's a single-digit legacy account. Sterling's eyes widened. He snatched the check. He looked at the signature. Then he looked at me. His expression shifted from professional to deeply respectful. You are Jason Miller? He asked. Yes, I squeaked. And Joseph Miller is your grandfather? Yes. Please, Sterling said, gesturing toward the heavy oak doors of the private conference room. Come with me, immediately. Finally, Dad huffed, straightening his tie. Someone to sort this mess out. Come on, Jason. Let's get this over with so we can go to brunch. We walked into the conference room. It was silent and smelled of leather and money. Sterling didn't sit down. He went to a safe in the wall, spun the dial, and pulled out a thick, leather-bound ledger. He opened it to the very first page. Mr. Miller, Sterling said to my father, you seem to be under the impression that this check is a joke. Well, look at it, Dad argued. It's written on yellow paper. My dad lives in a shack. He reuses paper towels. Mr. Joseph Miller, Sterling said, his voice icy, lives in a shack because he believes in modesty. But he does not reuse paper towels because he is poor. He does it because he hates waste. Sterling turned the ledger around. This bank was founded in 1955, Sterling explained, by 3 partners. One of them was Joseph Miller. He bought out the other 2 in 1980. He didn't sell his shares when we merged. He retained them. He just ... Stop touching the dividends. What are you talking about? Mom whispered, her face pale. I'm talking about compound interest, Sterling said. And 40 years of accumulated stock options. He tapped the computer screen on the desk. The check says everything I have. In banking terms, that authorizes a full liquidation and transfer of the account's assets to the payee. Sterling looked at me. Jason, as of 9 a.m. this morning, the balance of your grandfather's trust is $142 million. Room went so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. 140 million? Dad choked out. He grabbed the edge of the table to keep from falling. Plus change, Sterling added dryly. My mother made a sound like a deflating balloon and actually sank into a chair. I stared at the check in my hand. The yellow, crumpled paper. Grandpa had been sitting on a fortune larger than small countries, and he let my parents mock him for years. He let them buy him cheap sweaters and talk down to him, just to see if they would ever treat him with respect without knowing his worth. They failed. Oh my God, Dad breathed, suddenly recovering. A greedy light ignited in his eyes. He lunged toward me. Jason, my boy, did you hear that? We're rich. We are rich. He tried to hug me. I took a step back. We? I asked. Well, yes. Dad laughed. A manic, desperate sound. You're 18, Jason. You can't handle that kind of money. It's dangerous. Mom and I will. We will manage it for you. We'll put it in the joint account. We'll buy a bigger house. A yacht. We need to get Grandpa out of that shack immediately. We need to get power of attorney. Mom shouted, suddenly alert. He's old. We need to protect the assets. Stop, Sterling cut in. My parents froze. The transfer has a codicil, Sterling said, pulling a sealed envelope from the ledger. Your grandfather left instructions. This envelope was to be opened only if the check was presented. Sterling handed me the letter. Read it, Jason. Out loud. I opened the envelope. My hands were shaking. Inside was Grandpa's handwriting, much steadier than on the check. Jason, if you are reading this, you went to the bank. You listened to an old man when everyone else laughed. That is why you deserve what is in this account. I have watched your parents for 18 years. I have watched them chase status, mock the poor, and treat family like accessories. I stayed in my cabin to test them. I wanted to see if they loved me, or if they just wanted an inheritance. They failed. You passed. But there is a condition for this money. I paused. My parents were leaning in, their eyes bulging. Go on, Dad urged. What's the condition? I read the next line. The condition is simple. This money is yours, Jason. But if you give a single cent to your parents, if you buy them a dinner, pay a bill, or share a penny of this fortune, the entire amount will instantly revert to charity. They must not touch it. They must not benefit from it. They laughed at the fake check. So let them live without the real one. I looked up. My parents looked like they had been shot. That's illegal, Dad screamed. He can't do that. We're his family. He can, Sterling said with a shark-like smile. It's an irrevocable trust with a morality clause. It's ironclad. I looked at my parents. They weren't looking at me with love. They were looking at me like I was a locked safe they needed to crack. Jason, honey, Mom cooed, her voice trembling. Grandpa is ... He's confused. We're a team, remember? The BMW. We gave you a BMW. A leased BMW, I corrected. We can fight this, Dad growled, turning to Sterling. I'll sue. I'll declare the old man incompetent. You can try, I said, feeling a surge of confidence I had never felt before. But Grandpa has $142 million worth of lawyers. And now? So do I. So I looked at my parents. Are we done here? Because I'd like to take Mr. Sterling to lunch. And I can't pay for you. It's against the rules. Dad's face turned purple. He raised his hand, and for a second, I thought he was going to hit me. Dad's hand was in the air, trembling with rage. But before he could swing, a heavy hand clamped down on his wrist. It was the security guard who had been standing silently by the door. I wouldn't do that, sir, Mr. Sterling said, his voice calm but dangerous. Assaulting a high-value client in my bank is a federal offense, and I assure you I will press charges on his behalf. Dad lowered his hand, his face crumpling from anger to defeat. He looked at the security guard, then at Sterling, and finally at the check that was still sitting on the mahogany table. The check that represented a life he would never have. Fine, Dad spat, straightening his jacket. Keep the money. See if we care. We don't need you, Jason. We have our own lives. But don't come crawling back to us when you blow it all on sports cars and video games. I won't, I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key to the BMW they had given me the night before. Here, I said, tossing the key onto the polished table. It slid across and hit Dad's hand. What is this? Dad snapped. The lease is in your name, right? I said. I don't want it. I can buy my own car now. One that doesn't come with strings attached. You ungrateful little ... double quotes. Mom started, but Sterling cut her off. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, please leave. Now. They stormed out, muttering curses, leaving me alone in the quiet room with $142 million and a very shocked bank manager. Mr. Sterling, I said, taking a deep breath. I'd like to transfer the funds to a secure account. And then, I need a ride. An hour later, I pulled up to Grandpa's cabin in the bank's courtesy limousine. It looked ridiculous parked on the dirt road next to his rusted pickup truck. I walked up the creaky porch steps. Grandpa was sitting in his rocking chair, sipping tea from a chipped mug. He didn't look surprised to see me. Did you see Mr. Sterling? Grandpa asked, not looking up from his bird-watching. I did, I said, sitting on the step next to him. The teller fainted. Grandpa chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. I figured she might. I haven't checked the balance since 1998. It grew a bit, didn't it? A bit, I smiled. Grandpa ... Why didn't you tell them? You could have lived in a mansion. You could have traveled the world. Grandpa finally looked at me. I have everything I need right here, Jason. The trees. The birds. My tea. Money is just a tool. It reveals who people really are. For your parents, it revealed greed. I hope it reveals freedom. He patted my hand. Did you read the letter? I did. And I returned the BMW keys, I said. They are on their own. Grandpa nodded, satisfied. Good. They need to learn to stand on their own 2 feet. Maybe now they'll actually get jobs instead of waiting for me to die. The aftermath was swift and brutal for my parents. They had been living on credit cards and loans, banking entirely on the idea that when Old Man River died, they would inherit millions. When they realized the well was dry and permanently sealed, their house of cards collapsed. 6 months later, the bank foreclosed on their house. The leased BMW was repossessed. They had to move into a 2-bedroom apartment across town. Dad had to take a job as a mid-level manager at a logistics firm, a job he considered beneath him just to pay rent. They tried to sue, of course. They hired a lawyer to challenge the trust. But Grandpa's lawyers were the best money could buy. The case was thrown out in weeks. As for me, I didn't buy a yacht. I didn't buy a mansion. I bought a nice, normal house near the university I wanted to attend. I moved Grandpa into the guest suite. He refused a mansion, but he accepted a room with a heated floor for his arthritis and a big window for bird-watching. I paid for my college tuition up front. I started a charitable foundation in Grandpa's name to help underprivileged kids go to school. One day, about a year later, I was walking out of a restaurant with Grandpa. We were laughing about something, heading toward my car, a reliable, safe SUV that I owned outright. Across the street, I saw them. Mom and Dad were walking out of a discount grocery store. They looked tired. They were arguing about a receipt. Dad was carrying the heavy bags because they couldn't afford a cart rental. They looked up and saw us. For a moment, time stopped. Dad looked at Grandpa, looking healthy and happy in his new coat. He looked at me, looking free. I saw Dad take a step toward us. I saw the desperate look in his eyes. The look of a man about to ask for just a small loan. Grandpa saw it too. He gripped my arm. Remember the condition, Jason, he whispered. Not a penny. I looked at my father. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt pity. I nodded at him, a polite, distant nod. Then I opened the car door for Grandpa, got in, and drove away. I kept the money. But more importantly, I kept my promise. And Grandpa, he finally stopped reusing tea bags. He says the fresh ones taste like victory. If you loved watching Jason and Grandpa teach those greedy parents a lesson, smash that like button. And here is a question for you. If you inherited millions with the condition that you couldn't give a cent to your struggling family, would you keep the money or reject it? Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of justice served.